Welcome to Securing America with me, Frank Gaffney, the program that's a kind of owner's manual for protecting the country we love against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to God's glory and that of his kingdom. We talk almost always on this program about the threat to our country against which it needs protecting more than any others, arguably the greatest threat it's ever faced in its history, and that arises from the Chinese Communist Party. It has made no secret of its intent to not just supplant us as the dominant power in the world, but to destroy us using, among other things, unrestricted warfare techniques, and now it seems increasingly likely old fashioned military ones as well. There are few people I know who understand better the nature of the Chinese Communist Party and are more directly, actively, and impactfully raising the warning about what's going on with it and its ambitions and its progress towards fulfilling them than our first guest. He is a frequent visitor with us, I'm pleased to say, a member of our Committee on the Present Danger China. He is an author, uh, both of long form books, including one about what China wants. Han imperialism, Han centrism, sorry, including what China wants, Han centrism, and the balance of power in international politics. His name is Dr. Bradley Thayer. We are very pleased always to have a visit with him, especially on a day like today when there's a lot of China in the news, as there should be. Brad, welcome back to Securing America. It's good to have you with us, as always. Let me ask you about a piece that you wrote in Epic Times recently about this balance of power in politics and how vital it is that we hold up our end of it if we wish to continue to enjoy, well, our fundamental freedoms and economic prosperity.
Thank you, Frank. I'm very pleased to be with you again. Power is the coin of the realm in international politics. Power allows the United States to advance its interests, protect its allies, and sustain a liberal international order. So it's absolutely essential that it's maintained by the United States. We also need to recognize power comes in many forms: material power, but there's also, very importantly, military power is a key aspect of that, economic might. Also, it takes place in the realm of ideas. So we can think of ideological power, we can think of diplomacy. China is challenging us on every aspect of that due to its growth. It has greatly changed the relative balance of power between the United States and China in China's favor. So, this is the situation that we now face. Additionally, Frank, it's augmented, the change in the balance of power is made worse by the assistance that Wall Street and many others are giving to China to allow it to continue to grow and become stronger, while in a relative sense, then the United States becomes weaker. So
Right.
the United States needs to think of international politics through the lens of power. What's helping America sustain its power and grow its power, and what's helping China do the same. And the United States needs to focus laser like on what are the sources of the growth of Chinese power and eliminate those so that the United States can sustain its position in international politics and continue to lead the free world against the government of the Chinese Communist Party, the odious
Right.
Chinese regime.
Brad, that was, as always, extremely well said. I want to come back to this issue of our helping, indeed underwriting the Chinese Communist Party and the threat that it represents to the rest of us in the next block. But staying with this issue of the dynamic that is at work that must be constantly attended to. I mean, if you're not going to actually defeat an enemy, you at best must check their ambitions and deter them from thinking they can realize them at your expense, perhaps through violent means, perhaps through other techniques. My old boss, Ronald Reagan, of course, famously opted for the first of those options. Rather than containing the old Soviet Union, he set about to bring them down, and praise God, did, in fact. A similar moment is at hand where if we're not going to actually seek to put the Chinese Communist Party out of business, which is very much my preference, at a minimum, we have to be taking steps to try to prevent them from thinking they can act aggressively against Taiwan, against our other friends and allies, or assets, or interests, or indeed us elsewhere around the world. And Brad, I just can't say enough about one of your really important insights in what is driving this, and what therefore must be part of our calculations in maintaining this balance of power. This phenomenon you call Han centrism. Tell us a little bit about it. I mean, it's fundamentally a racist agenda, is it not? And that, it would seem to me, should be something that every American would recoil from.
Indeed, Frank, all Americans should. In fact, people around the world should recoil from it. Han centrism is a common belief among the Han people in China that is the dominant group. Approximately 92% of China's population is a single ethnic group, the Han. And they have a worldview which places the Han at the center. China's the middle kingdom, of course, the center of the universe, or the center of the world. In international politics and the economic realm, and ideology, philosophy, art, science. And so because of that worldview, they see everyone else in a subordinate position. And that has important advantages for China, but also very significant disadvantages as well. The advantages are that it helps to unify China as a potent force in international politics. While Americans and many other countries in the West and elsewhere are at sixes and sevens against one another, the Chinese as a people are unified. They may not like the government of the Chinese Communist Party, but they identify, essentially, they have a strong sense of nationalism. The disadvantages is that because of Han centrism, they treat everyone else as inferiors. And whether those are going to be Europeans, or whether they're going to be Africans, people in Southeast Asia, South Asia, around the world, other peoples, other nations, other states are going to be seen as inferior to the Han in every sense. And the Han expectation is that they'll recognize the superiority of the Han and accept their subordinate position in international politics. And so we often see Chinese
But if
people,
not, they're prepared to impose that on them, I think it's fair to
indeed,
say. And a really important feature of doing that, and it's very much underway at the moment, as you know so well, Bradley Thayer, is through this so-called Belt and Road Initiative, which is essentially a colonial infrastructure build-out, which has at least one of the benefits to the Chinese of essentially enslaving the populations that submit to it. Brad, we're going to come back and talk a bit more about this, and in particular, whether all Chinese embrace these tenets or not, and what that might mean for our policy approaches to them. Brad Thayer will continue on the other side of this short break.
Real America's Voice presents Water Cooler with David Brody.
If you're going to look into January 6th, I mean, there's a broader issue here, too, about some violence going on in other places.
Burning of cities, looting of cities, murder, destruction of personal and public property, assault on cops, assault on innocent civilians. You want to look at something, you should definitely be looking at that.
Don't miss Water Cooler, weekdays at 3 p.m. Eastern.